There are very few people who are able to survive in a situation where they feel so small. When belittled, only those with a strong heart are able to overcome it all and still smile through their experiences. As the main character of a shonen manga, Asta had no choice but to be strong in character and overcome the discrimination that he faced. Using hard work and resilience, he overcame so many struggles and has been succeeding on his own merit so far. But is that really true? Whenever I see Black Clover criticisms being made, one of the biggest points is that Asta was handed his anti-magic and he never really struggled for it. While this is vastly irresponsible in the way that these critics portray Asta, there is definitely a semblance of truth in that argument. It definitely was fate that Asta was chosen by his grimoire, as confirmed by the latest events in the manga. So, what about those who were not chosen? What about those that were so close to being special for not being special, like Asta? We have seen the people that Asta fights for represented in his siblings at the church. These are the people who have seen him and his tenacity and have faith and hope in Asta as a person and not for his anti-magic. But beyond them, what about the unseen commoner? The unheard voices of those who barely have any magic to speak of. This anime original arc of Black Clover tackles that very question. It challenges the core ideology of the Clover Kingdom and points out the fallacy of its societal structure, and also introduces a couple of new characters who I believe will definitely play a role in the larger story at a later date. But most of all, it critiques. Hello everyone, my name is Buzzard, and this is the Devil Banishers, a critique on the Clover Kingdom. Let's go. This video is split into 3 chapters. In the final chapter, the critique will contain spoilers, heavy spoilers for this particular arc. But if you're only intrigued by this arc and want to understand what it could be about, I suggest you leave after watching the first 2 chapters, because the 3rd chapter will be going into spoiler territory. You have been warned. But if you want to see more Black Clover content from me, news updates, chapter reactions, reviews, and other analytical videos like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. And if you like this video, make sure you let me know by dropping a like. It really does help the channel reach out to more people. But with that said, let's get into the first chapter, the Clover Kingdom. To me, personally, there are few things that are as hard-hitting as a society failing the people it is inhabited by, and this arc really shines in exemplifying that particular problem. While everyone loves the underdog story of the little guy fighting against the system and being successful, if a story does not show the ugly underside of that narrative, it rarely fleshes itself out. The society being challenged only feels like it has been challenged when we as an audience get to see the entire effect of the society's lack of efficiency to be what it is supposed to be. The common populace questions the legitimacy of the Magic Knights, and what is born out of it is rebellion. Earlier in the arc, we are introduced to a character of lesser importance in the grander story of the arc and the series, but still important to understand the kingdom and its people. Cobway Carillion was a member of the Magic Parliament, high enough in the ladder to be able to speak to Damnatio Kira, but not influential enough to actually do anything. He lost his nephews in the Elven attack and, like the rest of the kingdom, he believed that Asta and Nero were the reason why the attack happened. I'd just like to jump in and point out how finally Black Clover is using his newspapers to do something that One Piece does all the time, which is reach out this information effectively to a wide variety of characters and to see their reaction to this news depending on what kind of characters they are. So far in the story, we've only seen that particular piece of newspaper article used as a gag of sorts, or just information to us. But in this arc, we're finally getting to see the reactions of these people in different manners in a way that you would actually expect the world to behave when this kind of information is presented to them. To the viewers who knew of what happened in the off arc, Damnatio's decision to postpone their trial is a decision that is as close to justice as one can get. But from the perspective of everyone else, there is no justice. They suffered, They lost hope in those that were supposed to protect them. They got to know who was behind their suffering, and they saw these people being pardoned. Even Cobway, who was in the Magic Parliament, did not understand this decision, and thus came to the conclusion that the Magic Parliament was forced by the Magic Knights to come to that particular decision. To Cobway, the Magic Knights, even though were manipulated, were the ones who brought down destruction and death. So, to see them influence a judiciary decision to protect the very same people who did the manipulating was the final nail in the coffin. When the system you are a part of screams out its corruption to you, all you need is one small, single push to take that leap into revolution. The only thing that would help our protagonists hindered the justice that the common man was owed. Ultimately, it further points out the inconsistent mess that is the Clover Kingdom. While Julius is thinking ahead and for our protagonists, those who are left behind are forgotten, even by the Wizard King this time. His actions had major repercussions that he failed to see coming, and further proves to us that even if you try your hardest, when the system is so corrupt from its core, there is nothing even power like Julius, or power like Kira's, or especially power like Cobway's can hope to do. The anime's writing team really outdid themselves when they chose this type of a story. If you've been keeping up with the manga, the concept of pushing down those beneath you even further would really resonate with you because of the recent revelations regarding the devils in their world. The arc not only highlights the problems in the Clover Kingdom, but also points out the overall thematic message that Black Clover tries to tackle. We can keep talking about how the high class and the upper echelon of society is corrupt, and they're the major reason why those beneath are always suffering, but this arc does go one step further and makes it clear to us that the Clover Kingdom is rotten in every way imaginable. Even those at the lower level of society found the main character of this arc, Dazu, to be someone to discriminate against for her lack of magical ability. The character's motivation and the events that transpired during this arc is not because of the people in power who ruined her life, but it was the common people she lived with and was believed to be a part of, whose attitude towards her that resulted in her character. The society of the Clover Kingdom, while being run by corrupt individuals, is, of course, influenced to remain that way because it is the people who live in it who take after their leaders, who only perpetuate what problems already exist in the kingdom. This arc does an excellent job of dismantling the Clover Kingdom and reinforcing so many core ideologies and themes of the series as a whole, while also questioning the outcome of certain actions that were narratively necessary in the main plot, and thereby questioning the system that us, the viewers, have come to get so comfortable with. Are the Magic Knights really essential to the kingdom? Do they fight for the people as they so claim? What is the ultimate conclusion that the people who have been forgotten come to? Is this conclusion right? Is it justified? Let's talk about it. Chapter 2, The Wrong Lesson. In the beginning of the video, I questioned the legitimacy of the statement Asta earned the anti-magic powers that he has. As viewers, we understand all the struggle that Asta has gone throughout his journey. Even though the popular understanding is that Asta was able to join the Magic Knights because of his anti-magic, the truth is, Yami chose Asta for the Black Bulls for who he was. Multiple times throughout the series, characters remind us that Asta is so physically ahead of most, if not all people, that it seems to the common eye that Asta uses movement enhancement magic when he is just that physically capable. William even comments on this during the exam, and what convinced Yami that Asta was worth it was his response in front of overwhelming, insurmountable strength. All of that to say, while Asta did get his anti-magic due to chance, it is the work that he has put in exclusive of obtaining anti-magic, and even after obtaining it, that makes him someone who is worthy of this power to stand alongside powerful magic knights even though he has no magic himself. But all of the things I just mentioned about Asta is clear as day to the viewers, but thinking about it from the outside perspective, from the perspective of an orphan child maybe, who was born to peasants with barely any magic power, it, unfortunately, ultimately, is luck. The Devil Banishers viewed Asta and Yuno as shining stars who were luckily born with the amazing innate ability to shine despite being peasants. But then, it is revealed that one of them is only as incredible as he is because of his deal with the devil. Naturally, it is assumed that if the power of the devil can be used by you, you become powerful. And Asta is where he is only because of the devil. This arc talks about how heroism, when looked through the stained lens, gives you a skewed perspective, and all that Asta has been trying to achieve, even though it was meant to inspire, resulted in the absolute worst misinterpretation you could think of. Asta, who wanted to save people and lift them up from the life they lived because of society, was the beacon of false hope and gross false idealism of a terrifying and evil means of power. Beyond all of that though, to answer the question that I had posed earlier, did the Devil Banishers do the right thing? Were they justified? They kidnapped 2 characters and decided to execute them after a public display where they proved their distrust towards their magic knights. At the end, nothing was achieved and Cowboy still wanted to go ahead with the execution, and he put so many innocents in harm's way. We even get a glimpse into Damnation's thoughts on how badly Cowboy had fallen, and even though this might seem hypocritical, it gives us further depth into a character about whom we knew very little. I'll leave the justification of their actions to you, the viewer. Let me know down in the comments below whether you think the Devil Banishers were right, from their own perspective, to take matters into their own hands. Or do you think they should have just trusted in the Magic Knights still, regardless of how bad the reputation of the Magic Knights was at that point? But beyond the justification of the choices made by the characters, there are some choices made by the anime team in general for this arc, which deserves its own section in this video. So, let's talk about the good, the bad, and unfortunately, the ugly. Chapter 3, The Critique. If you have not seen the arc yet, I suggest you do so before watching this section of the video as stated previously. Till now, I have tried my best to avoid specific story spoilers regarding characters and events, but this chapter or section exists solely to critique those very things. So moving forward, this video will contain spoilers. You have been warned, so make sure you go, watch the arc, and then come back and then listen to me talk about the arc from a narrative standpoint, and then let me know down in the comments below what you thought of the arc as well. So let's get into the critique. This arc was not amazing. I know, I've been praising it for so long throughout this entire video, so how can a not so amazing arc be worthy of so much analysis? Well, if you listened carefully, I only praise the writing team for choosing this type of story and not the story itself. But at the same time, while the arc was not amazing, it wasn't bad either. It tackled a lot of good themes and introduced Dazu. Dazu is such a breath of fresh air as a character, and I think for the type of series that Black Clover is, Dazu is definitely a required character who fleshes out the cast of characters even further. So what was my issue in particular with this arc? The easy and most obvious answer for everybody is probably pacing. But for me, the issue was completely different. While of course pacing did play a huge role, I'll get to pacing in a minute, but my main problem with the arc was that it never went far enough. The arc was so shackled by the fact that it was a filler arc, and at the end of it, it should virtually leave no after effect that barely changes anything by the end. There was no growth, there is no furthering of the plot, character progression, nothing. It felt like it was all for naught. While we saw Asta being sad, we even saw William take off his mask, and we saw Damnatio mourn his subordinate, but these characters remain the same people they were in the beginning of this arc at the end of this arc, including Dazu, which is insane to me because she is one of the most important characters of this arc. So far, these problems that I have brought up could be excused by saying you have a problem with the nature of the story itself and that can be helped. But the entire character of Dazu was so pointless for herself by the end that the only thing that has left an impression on me was the great twist and her representing the people who were forgotten. Dazu does not change and does not instigate change. Dazu acts out of character at the end, and Dazu just disappears, hopefully to return again in the main story just like Maxa, but perhaps not, given how and what kind of a character she is. It is quite hard to say, but I really would hope that the manga would address these characters. But The reason why this problem frustrates me so much is because of who Dazu was throughout. Her character had the potential to be explored so much better, but due to the anime wanting to focus its attention on things that dragged out and ruined the pacing, it only feels like we got a small peek into a very interesting mind. Not only Dazu suffers from this, but Bo does too. From my understanding prior to watching the arc, these two characters seem to be extremely important, but Bo just existed for the sake of existing. She barely has a personality, and it feels like her entire role was to just be, oh wow, look at that, Black Clover has a gay couple in it. Whereas it could have been explored so much more. Bo seemed to be the only person that Dazu could rely upon, and apart from a very small scene, there is nothing more backing up their relationship, and the scene seemed to exist only to justify Dazu's attachment to Bo, but not the other way around. Bo, in theory, is extremely interesting. She is doing something with that magic and does it better, but while she should have been shunned for it, given the theme of the arc, we get the old woman praising her for it and informing us and the characters that she is very well liked and respected, and that goes against her entire reasoning for wanting to be part of the organization. And most importantly, it kind of undermines the entire thematic message of this arc, right? Like, you know, the whole point is that even though you might be extremely amazing despite your lack of magical ability, you are hated for that, and or disliked or shunned or whatever. But she was not. I mean, there was no evidence to point towards the fact that she was forced to isolate, and you know, it just felt like that was her personal choice, and the woman even complimented her. So I don't know, it felt very, very inconsistent. But alas, it does nothing to ponder on what could have been. So let's talk about something that blew my mind during this arc, the good stuff, the plot twist. I did not see this coming at all. The anime really went into territory I did not expect it to. They really showed us how demented these people were, and while the name Devil Believer was extremely cheesy, the juxtaposition of their reveal after half the arc of us believing the opposite was quite amazing. And with full context, it made a lot of sense, the most sense actually. Other than that, Dazu's mental headspace during some certain moments and some of the imagery was extremely well done, and even though the majority of the arc was pretty bad with regards to art and animation, there were a couple of absolutely standout episodes with amazing animation that really helped to balance it all out. And like I said earlier, the pacing is definitely one of the biggest problems with the arc. We spend way too much time with the bulls just looking for answers, and it gets dragged on for way too long, where we could have spent a lot more time exploring characters like Cobway and Bo. Dazu's motivation was definitely more than serviceable, but like I mentioned earlier, it could have been delved into much, much more and helped us get a better understanding of who she is as a character. Maybe if the story delved into why her headspace was so negative and wrong, it would have helped overall to convey the thematic message, but overall she was definitely an interesting character. My final problem with the arc, and what tainted and brought all these other problems to light, was how it ended. It felt anticlimactic, to say the least, and the small fight against the random ice monster was very cool, but at the same time made very little narrative sense to happen. The setup for Dazu versus the rest of the Magic Knights was made and then just forgotten to highlight her powerlessness. Even Damnatio kind of acts out of character, where he only banishes them when Julius had to step in with a lot more to change his mind for Asta and Nero. The followers of the Devil Believers just left after William's speech when their hate was built up to be much more powerful than that, and that absolutely felt like a ball dropped by the narrative team, including the moment where Dazu just gives up and gives the grimoire back to Asta with no reason for doing so. But all in all, it is an extremely flawed piece of writing whose flaws can be attributed to its lack of ability to deliver something that can impact the larger story at hand. But at the same time, it really shows you that these writers have understood fundamentally what kind of a story Black Clover is and what it needs to be. So it definitely must be praised for that. So what did you guys think about this arc? Would you recommend a manga only to watch it? If you would, if they need to be convinced, I would suggest showing them this video so that they're getting a lot more convinced to watch it. Do you think that Dazu and Bo will show up again just like Maxa and the manga? Do you have any theories on how that might happen? Leave a comment down below so we can talk about it. If you could leave a like on this video, it'll help me understand what type of content you'd like to see from me moving forward. And if you want me to cover some other type of content, make sure to tweet at me on Twitter at BuzzardYTC, or again, leave a comment on this video. Subscribe to the channel for content similar to this, and I will see you guys in my next video. Goodbye.